Recently, I've been thinking about making some major upgrades to my gaming setup. I mean, upgrading everything from PC specs to my monitors all the way down to a new mouse and keyboard. But I've kind of been putting it off for the last couple of months, just wondering what upgrades I actually wanted to make. And thankfully, during that process, Galax reached out and offered to send over some of their latest gaming products. And it got me thinking, why not see what it would be like to game on an all Galax setup? I mean, some of you may be doing it right now with a company like Asus or MSI, or using an Asus motherboard, Asus graphics card, Asus monitors, and Asus peripherals. But why not with a company like Galax? I mean, Galax is super well known for their innovation and ingenuity when it comes to graphics card design and graphics card performance. You can pretty much always find them at the top of the leaderboard when it comes to the 3D Mark Hall of Fame. But why not see what the rest of their gaming product line has to offer? So instead of just throwing in a Galax graphics card, I wanted to see what it would be like to game on their monitors and use their gaming peripherals. So in today's video, we're going to be swapping out both of my monitors. One is an Asus 165Hz 1440p gaming monitor. The other one is a 75Hz kind of just secondary display to have as a secondary monitor. And we're going to be swapping both of those out with two Galax Vivance 01 gaming monitors. These things are 165Hz IPS 1440p with HDR capabilities, G-Sync compatibility. Overall, it should be a great experience to have two of the same monitor. I'm really looking forward to just cleaning up my setup with two of the same thing. Hopefully just get rid of all the OCD about having non-matching panels. We're also going to be swapping out my mouse with this Galax Slider 05. It is a super light, super interesting designed mouse with some crazy RGB accents, which we'll take a look at. Overall, just really excited about getting my hands on this thing. And finally, we're going to be swapping out my graphics card, which is a Gigabyte RTX 3080 Ti. And the majority of you are probably wondering, why are you upgrading an RTX 3080 Ti? And honestly, I probably wouldn't be if it wasn't for this video, but at the same time, I want to see how the Galax GeForce RTX 4070 Ti EX Gamer holds up in my small form factor build. I mean, it should be a good performance bump over the 3080 Ti, and it also has all the amazing features of RTX 40 series, better AI accelerated performance for things like DLSS, more ray tracing cores, more cores overall, so we should see great performance at 1440p, but I do want to put to the test how this thing performs in terms of temperatures and cooling when it comes to that NR200 build. We'll do some overclocking on it, just overall see how does it perform when it is maybe a little bit restricted for air. So there it is. Let's actually start some upgrades. We'll swap out the monitors first. We'll throw in the graphics card and we'll put it all to the test with some games and try out that new mouse. So I've actually already done a video on the Galax Vivance 01 gaming monitor, so definitely check that thing out for more details. But overall, this thing is a really, really nice budget-friendly option for 1440p high refresh rate gaming. You don't get a super ergonomic stand, but you do get, of course, VESA compatibility, so you can mount it on an arm. It also has a very convenient and nice on-screen display. And as you can see, very little ghosting, very little response rate issues with this 165Hz gaming monitor. So let's get these old panels out of here. We'll get the 75Hz one out, and we'll also get that gaming Asus TUF monitor out of here as well. And it's time to install these Galax Vivance 01 monitors. So overall, these things are really, really nice. Also, just from a design and aesthetic perspective, you have very slim borders on both of these monitors, and it just looks way better with a matching pair of monitors. As you can see, very slim borders, very beautiful colors on these displays. 95% DCI-P3. Overall, an amazing setup when it comes to monitors. But now it's time to power those bad boys, and that means unboxing our RTX 4070 Ti. So the 4070 Ti kind of got off to a bad start with the kind of 4080 Ti kind of situation. But overall, this is an awesome gaming graphics card to compete against last generation RTX 30 series. I mean, you're still able to spend a ton of money on an RTX 30 series card, so are you better off spending that on a 40 series card like the 4070 Ti? I mean, this thing is outperforming even a 3080 Ti, so even if you were looking at something like a 3090, you're probably better off going with the 4070 Ti for similar performance. We do get a GPU sag bracket inside of the box, which is nice. It's a very simple setup, maybe not as cool or interesting as some of the other options that Galax sends out with like their 4080, 4090 cards, but it should do the trick to at least prevent your graphics card from sagging in your case. I'm not going to need it in the small form factor build, but it is very nice to have. We also have an ARGB header, so you can control the RGB on the graphics card with your motherboard, and then of course a extension or a connector to connect two 8-pin graphics card headers to that one 12-pin connector that is standard with these 40 series cards. And now let's get this thing out of the packaging. I mean, overall, you can already see how big and beefy this thing is. It is a triple slot card with the 4070 Ti, so we are pumping out a ton of heat with this chip, which means we need a beast of a cooling setup. And it kind of is this same standard design that we got with 30 series, but also 40 series with this pass-through GPU heatsink setup where you have that third fan at the end of the card pretty much blowing air straight through your heatsink with no backplate covering it in order to maximize the heat transfer out of this thing. But we get 3 DisplayPort and 1 HDMI on the back of this card. Super nice. You can have 4 displays running off of this GPU, and the design of this card just looks great. The silver back plate and the black shroud, they look really, really nice, and you have some super big fans on that card as well. But let's get the 3080 Ti Vision Gaming out of the PC and get ready for the 4070 Ti install. So the 3080 Ti and the 4070 Ti pretty much have the same exact footprint. I mean, Gigabyte chose to go with a dual slot card, but it is more of like a triple slot card. You just only have 2 slots on it. It's more of a 2.5 versus the 3 that Galax is sending out with the 4070 Ti, but very similar thickness and almost the exact same length of graphics card, which means this thing should fit perfectly fine in our NR200. So even if you are doing a small form factor build, you can get a ton of power into that build with a card like this. We do have to remove that bottom bracket in order to install the triple slot card into this thing. But overall, process to install it, super simple. It does fit through the opening on the front of the case, so we can just slide it right in. And then we'll use the adapter to adapt from that 12-pin connector into our 2 8-pin headers that we're using to power our 3080 Ti. I did have 2 fans on the bottom of my case that I did choose to remove in order to make sure that I had full clearance and full air coming through without any turbulence to the GPU. Let's start this bad boy up, and it seems to be going very, very smooth in terms of the startup process. You can see the super nice RGB accent with the GeForce RTX logo. And we boot straight into the BIOS, which is great. So no issues with the graphics card settings. And overall, this thing just looks super good inside of this case. The RGB looks great. The accents are awesome. And it ties in perfectly with this Slider 05 mouse from Galax. So let's jump into that now. So this Galax Slider 05 is an awesome lightweight gaming mouse. It does come with a wired connection. So it is a wired mouse. It's not going to be wireless. But overall, I kind of want to see what it's like to game on this type of mouse. One that is super focused on the lightest possible setup for your gaming peripheral. And also the cable that does come with the mouse, even though it is a wired mouse, it is super nice. It's kind of got like this paracord style sleeving on it. Overall, it feels really good. Like when you hold a mouse, you can tell whether it's like a cheap plastic or a more firm, really good plastic, and this thing feels really good. And overall, you do get some slight instructions on how to update DPI settings and colors and what everything means on this mouse. Each color, when you do click the DPI button, indicates what DPI you're on. But I want to compare this thing to something like the Logitech G Pro Superlight. I mean, this mouse it's a wireless mouse, fully focused on being the lightest possible wireless mouse that you can get your hands on for gaming. But how does it compare to a wired mouse that is also fully focused on that light factor by removing pretty much all of the shell in order to focus on that really cool aesthetic, one where you can see the internals of the mouse, but also the lightness of it as well. So the Logitech G Pro Superlight weighs in at 61 grams, and that's with the battery and everything inside. And our mouse, the Slider 05 from Galax with the wire, so everything on the scale, we're weighing in at right around 90 to 91 grams. So that's with the wire. But the wire is not a part of the gaming setup. You're barely going to feel that when you are gaming. So when we put it off to the side, we're sitting at 57 grams on the Slider 05. So a very, very light mouse for a very good gaming setup. And overall, this thing looks amazing. So like even with the RGB turned off, the thing looks really, really cool. And with the RGB on, it looks awesome. You get the Galax logo to light up on the inside. You get this really cool front ring that lights up RGB, and then you have the scroll wheel as well, RGB, which will dictate what DPI setting you're set to on the mouse. So blue is the lowest setting, which is by default 1000 DPI, and then red is 2000 DPI, but you can update in the software, which is the Xtreme Tuner utility from Galax. So Xtreme Tuner Plus is the software for both overclocking Galax graphics cards as well as managing Galax peripherals. So you have so many settings in Xtreme Tuner that we'll be able to look at in a little bit in terms of overclocking our 4070 Ti, both GPU frequency, memory frequency, all kinds of temperature and power limits, as well as fan curves. So you have all kinds of capabilities here. And then you also have the ability to update the peripherals. So we can see our Slider 05 right inside of the Xtreme Tuner utility, and we can update all of those DPI settings. So I can make red 300 or 400 DPI. I can make blue 800 DPI. So you have all the possibilities to customize this thing, and you also have multiple profiles that you can save to the onboard memory on the mouse. So that means you can have multiple profiles for the same mouse, and then if somebody else is using the mouse, or you just want to have different profiles for different games, you can do that as well. Overall, it's like super nice to have this all built into one software. The same software you're using to overclock your graphics card and set up RGB is the same software you're using to set up your mouse. Easy peasy lemon squeezy with this application and being able to manage all of your Galax gaming setup. So let's test this thing out. I want to see what the temperatures behave like in our NR200 with this card. So with our 3080 Ti, we were sitting at right around like 72, 73 degrees Celsius on our GPU. After a 10-minute stress test, that's where we were sitting. And immediately you can see the GPU temperatures starting to rise on the 4070 Ti. Of course, this thing is outputting more heat than the 3080 Ti. It's also at a higher clock speed, and we're pretty much sitting at 68, 69 degrees Celsius. But when I pump the fan speed up to 100%, just watch how quickly the GPU temperatures drop. So we're sitting at around 2295, 2310 megahertz on the GPU, and you can immediately see us starting to drop in the temperature department. So we're already down to 66. This thing is eventually going to get down to 62 degrees Celsius, which is awesome. That's right where you want your GPU to be, especially in this small form factor setup where you have very, very little fans or case fans to support your GPU cooling. Now, the thing is, this GPU does get a little bit hotter than the 3080 Ti, which means my CPU is paying the price for that. All that heat's being pumped out of that back hole on the back of the backplate and kind of going straight into the GPU or CPU. So the CPU was sitting in the mid to high 80s on temperatures, but overall, I mean, the GPU performance is great. And the one-click OC option bumps the GPU frequency up from around 2300 to 2500, so you get a 200 megahertz boost. By default, you just have to click the button and hit apply, and we're sitting at that 2490 to 2500 megahertz and still sitting at around 64 degrees Celsius with those fans blasted all the way to 100%. But even with the fans at 100% fan speed, the noise isn't crazy. It's a very, very subtle sound. Like there's no high-pitched whine or coil whine with this card. It's very much like the whoosh of the fan blades, which is kind of fine. Like you're not noticing it too much when you're gaming. And that's what we're gonna do. Let's test this thing out first with some F1 just to kind of see what the color accuracy is out of the monitors, but also to test the performance of a graphics card like the 4070 Ti on ultra high settings in our benchmarks. We're going to run the Saudi Arabia benchmark in F1 2022 and just see how we perform inside of this game. And I mean, the ultra high settings on this game look fantastic. Like with RTX turned on, you just see all of the reflections on the panels of the car. You can see it all on the steering wheel. It just looks great. This game looks great. And on this monitor, on these monitors, it looks fantastic. I'm really looking forward to potentially getting a third one of these and using it for a triple screen racing sim setup. But yeah, stay tuned for that just to see what comes out of it with this setup. But overall, I mean, the game looks great. The color accuracy of this thing at 95% DCI-P3 coverage looks fantastic. And overall, I mean, you're not really needing super high refresh rate in a game like F1, but we're still getting around 101 FPS on average, with maxes up to 120 and mins at 86. so very stable throughout that game. But what about a game like Valorant where it's super dependent on refresh rate? These monitors perform great, and the graphics card is outputting well over 500, even 600 FPS in this game. Typically, I'm sitting at like around 400, 350, and of course, you're not taking full advantage of that with these 165 hertz gaming monitors, but overall, I mean, they are able to manage it with that G-Sync compatibility. And the Slider 05 is an awesome mouse for a game like this. Super smooth to slide around, very, very similar, if not better, than my Logitech G Pro Superlight. Now that the setup is completed and it's all tested out, I have to say I am super impressed by all of these products, and definitely safe to say that Galax is not just a graphics card company. I mean, these monitors are fantastic. They play great both on high FPS as well as being super color accurate for games like F1, where color accuracy is a little bit more important for that real life feel over the frame rate of the monitor. But even in a game like Valorant at 165 hertz, these things look great. The mouse, although the wired setup maybe not the best, I do love having a wireless mouse. This does feel super responsive. Being able to change the DPI settings and adjust everything and save different profiles directly to the mouse through the Xtreme Tuner software, just a really nice quality of life feature with this setup. And again, that Xtreme Tuner utility makes it a breeze to overclock the 4070 Ti. Pretty much any Galax graphics card that you're throwing in this system, you can adjust RGB, fan speeds, a ton of control over the overclocking settings. Then you have that one-click OC to just bump up the megahertz by a couple hundred right off the bat. And kind of not having to do anything, you just hit the button and you're good to go. And it performs super well. I mean, the 70-degree temperature that we saw on the GPU under full load, very, very reasonable, especially keeping fan noise to a minimum. And even when we bumped fan noise up to 100%, the fan noise wasn't crazy loud, and we were able to bring GPU temperatures down into the low to mid 60s. Overall, I am super, super impressed by all of these products. The 4070 Ti looks amazing. It plays amazing. It games amazing. Definitely a nice improvement over the 3080 Ti. The mouse is great. The monitors, again, super nice feature. And I love having two of the same monitors. I might actually go ahead and buy myself a third one. That way I can get an entire gaming, a racing rig set up for F1 with the small form factor PC with the 4070 Ti. 3 of these bad boys set up for a full ultra-wide, all-encompassing display setup for a racing sim. Get it all set up, and maybe that is the next video to show you guys a triple monitor display setup with the 4070 Ti powering some F1 gameplay. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Any questions or comments, leave those down below. If you haven't already, get subscribed to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one.